Good afternoon, people. This is the People Show in conjunction with Our Eye on Islam. We're coming live to you today, this afternoon, because there was a couple of things that caught my eye that I thought everybody should know about. So I have got somebody on with me, and that's Mr. Graham Moore. He's a very good friend of mine, but he's also a very knowledgeable guy, I might add, to boot. And for all of you that are watching live, share it out, share the video out, share the Our on Islam app. Download it from iStores and Apple. I think it's Apple iStores actually. And go on and like the page and subscribe to the page, because the more you give us support, the more information we can bring to you. The more information we bring to you, the more knowledge you have. The more knowledge you have, the powerful we are. So I'd like to first say a welcome to Graham.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, Sunshine. And he's a big booming voice, a bit like mine. In fact, I think he's louder. So, Graham, the reason I decided to go live is I opened up a couple of links today, which has left me a little, shall we say, angered. Now, the first one is that the police have arrested 900 Syrians in England and Wales for crimes including rape and child abuse. Now, to my knowledge, we have let in 1,600 Syrian so-called refugees. So 900 of them being arrested for those kind of crimes. Those statistics are pretty massive, wouldn't you agree?
No, they are very high. But I mean, to be honest, I would suggest that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you already know what happened in Cologne, and the fact that they don't report the types of offences that they're committing, and I believe that's going on in this country. So 900, yeah, is a very high figure, but I think it's potentially a lot higher.
One of the things that I always find a little bit irritating and really starts to grate on me is that when you say to people, you know, these people, a majority of these are Muslim, and if you look at London, just London prisons, 27% of the population are Muslims, and they are committing crimes such as murder, rape, paedophilia, violence. The crimes are not, this isn't somebody nipping in and nicking a leg of lamb for Sunday dinner. The crimes are far
very serious crimes.
And they are serious crimes. So then when I was flicking through, I then come across an imam in Wales who has said that sexual slavery was okay in Islam, which we all know, or anybody who doesn't know, they sure as hell should know by now, that sexual slavery is permitted within Islam. And I think that's what we're seeing. We are seeing this they call it modern day. We talked about this earlier. They call it modern day sexual slavery. I don't think this is a modern day sexual slavery. I think this is something that's gone on throughout the history of Islam, and therefore it can't be modern because it's been happening for a very long time. But you had a sort of, you've got a thought on that yourself. So share that with everybody that's listening.
Well, earlier on today, there was a discussion on LBC and Tom Swilbeck, I believe it was, and his comments and the calls were in relation to Theresa May bringing out a new law and using the 12 billion in foreign aid to stop what she terms as modern day slavery. And when he actually read out everything that he believed was part of modern day slavery, it included child pickpocketing, it included prostitution and false prostitution, which in all effects is sexual slavery, and obviously rape. But there was a big list of things that he listed out. And what amazed me was the fact that he was suggesting, and so was Theresa May, that this was the modern day slavery. And one of the callers rang in that I completely agreed with, and he actually said, I think you need to be very careful with words, because the words you're using in terms of modern day slavery, you're actually playing with words. This is organised crime. And I agree with that. That it's exactly, when you send out groups of children that have been trained to pick pockets, and we all know or should all know who that is. I mean, it is endemic in Romanian society, um, and the gypsies of Romania, that they pickpocket and they are trained thieves. That's the way they work. And they have operated like that throughout Europe. And now they've come over to this country en masse. So one of the things that I did was I sent him a text message. And if I can pull the text message up here, I'll read out what I sent to him. And to be fair, he sort of agreed with me. The part that I thought was more strange was the fact that he seemed a little bit flummoxed about the political correctness element. So this is what I sent to him: is Tom, this is organised crime via multiculturalism and workers' rights being abused, caused by mass immigration. It's not slavery. It's a failure of modern politics, and it is exacerbated by political correctness. Now that's what I sent in to him. He didn't understand the element that I was trying to get over to him in the text, because if you try and call in, they filter the calls. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, when you walk into a house and there's 20 or 30 people living in that house, that has been caused by mass immigration. And a lot of them people are legally here, not just illegally here. And them people are being abused by employers because the workers' rights are gone. And we've basically gone back 100 years prior to Keir Hardie, who was the founder of the Labour Party. So, you know, my take on this is it's a bit like we've had discussions in the past about the laws on female genital mutilation, and I've said to you, I don't understand why they had to invent this new law. Because there are already English laws, not British laws, English laws, that cover female genital mutilation, which is under the Offences of the Persons Act, and it's what's known as Section 18, which is GBH with intent. That carries a life sentence. So I don't think there's anyone out there that would say that that isn't GBH, grievous bodily harm, with intent. They intended to do it. They've done it. It's a serious offence and it carries a life sentence. Why do they keep trying to create these new laws?
Not only that, not only are they trying to create new laws for things that we already have laws that, as you've rightly said, we could impose on people to make sure that this stops, you know, because we can't keep having this mass immigration into the country and saying, well, it's not a problem and refugees are welcome. I had a debate with a woman on Twitter the other day who is a volunteer out in Calais with the jungle. And I said to her, you've got extremists in your camps. And she went, no, we haven't. I said, yeah, trust me, we really have. And she went, no. She went, why would ISIS want to come over in such a way? They've got money. And I'm sitting there, my brain's going, am I missing something here? Are you missing something here? Because if you think that there isn't ISIS and extremists in those camps, it makes you stupid. I know that there was informants that were giving information about what was really going on in those camps that were thrown under lorries and thrown in front of trains. They were killed off to stop people knowing the truth. But if you say that, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're overreacting. No, we're not overreacting. I say that this country is underreacting. And what I find amazing... Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I agree. But I'd say we are under attack. And like I say, I mean, my view of the whole situation at the moment, it isn't modern day slavery. They're trying to repackage this and not say what it really is. This is where the political correctness is coming in. And the political correctness is getting in the way yet again. We are under attack. This is not... And the modern day politics is what's responsible for that, and what's responsible for allowing it to grow and fester. And unless they nip it in the bud now, then we will have a far worse situation, and we will be in a worse situation than what Sweden is.
Well, we'll end up in a civil war. Let's not dress it up. that is exactly what will happen. It will become a civil war, because how many women have got to be raped? How many men have got to be beaten and attacked and stabbed, or priests beheaded, or pregnant women stabbed to such an extent that it didn't just kill her, it killed her unborn child? How many more Rotherhams have we got to have, and Sheffields and Manchesters and Oxford and Birmingham, before the government don't seem to understand that people will react. But the minute they react, you want to claim that we're the intolerant ones. I think the government are the ones that have forced people in this country to become intolerant of it. They've created that. We didn't ask for it. Nobody asked you. Did anybody come and ask you? Did we mind having all of this mass immigration? I don't remember anybody sending me a little dossier out for me to fill in.
No, I agree entirely. And it leads into what you've just said. They haven't asked us whether we want this culture and this mass immigration as our neighbours, because they don't actually live on the streets, if you like. And when I say on the streets, it's obvious that politicians live in this country, but they can get up and go anytime they like. Yeah. Yep. They live generally in gated communities. Yeah. So
great mansions, all over the beautiful parts.
They travel around in bulletproof, bomb-proof cars. They have armed police protection. And yet they have disarmed us.
I did ask the question. I said, when you do debates, you've been on Russia Today, the same as I've been on Russia Today, and you know how difficult it is if somebody's got a slightly stronger Skype signal than you, that it tends to bleed over the top of your voice, and therefore it can often miss the point you're trying to make. But I've found that when you debate and you get on there, and I've debated Mawansa, I've debated Dili Hussein, and what they come out with is that they're disenfranchised, marginalised. I would say actually we're disenfranchised. I'd say we're marginalised. I would say we are the ignored public. And the truth of it is, I've said this so many times, if this is what people genuinely, if these politicians genuinely believe the bullshit they're coming out with, then I'm sorry, why do you need a bulletproof car, first of all? Second of all, if Muslims believe that the politicians such as Tony Blair is responsible, why is it they kill ordinary members of public or attack ordinary members? Why is there no immediate threat or assassination of Tony Blair? So how are they affected by it? They're not.
I agree. I mean, to be fair, I agree with that with that comment. And why? One of the things that amazes me with reference to Muslims is they keep saying the West, the policies of the West. And
that's another one, isn't it? It's the policies of the West.
The bit I don't get is that they voted in Tony Blair and the Labour government, who then took a decision to go to war in Iraq, that have caused a problem in the Middle East, that have bombed their brothers and sisters. I didn't vote for Labour.
Neither did I.
They block voted for Labour, and then they turn on us. Why?
And they call you far right.
And they call me far right.
And they call me far right. But as we've said, Graham, we're not far right. We're just not.
Not far wrong. No, and I totally agree. I mean, there are situations in this country now where, again, getting back to this guy that was on a link this morning in Cardiff, the same situation happened in America, where I believe it was an English imam went out to the States and actually said you should kill gays immediately. It must be the death sentence. And, within X amount of time, this guy's walked into Orlando and started machine gunning gays. And now you've got a guy sitting in Cardiff. The bit that really gets me about this is you've got these people all over this country that are preaching this hatred, that are installing this culture of fear. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm not frightened of them. I'm frightened of our government, because our government is not dealing with it. That's the bit
No,
that's
no.
really getting me. And when you look at what's just happened in Cardiff, this guy is preaching this stuff, and we've just had, all right, it was a silly thing to do, but they've stuck a bit of bacon on the handles of a mosque, and one of them got a year, and the other one's got 9 months.
And you know what? I myself, I'm sitting there thinking, so door handle, which you can change, bacon. Same as the fireman Sam incident, that it was a page from the Quran. Well, nobody would have said jack shit if that had been a page from the Bible or from the Torah. Nobody would have said anything. But I don't know if you saw, because you and I both use Twitter and we're linked up on Twitter, but the whole of Twitter was rife with the Islamophobia label and the faux offendedness of it's Fireman Sam, Elvis. And as I said in my video, I thought Elvis was dead. But what did it result in? I get a 30-day ban because it upset the university boy who decided to make a big issue out of it and report it.
Well, I can tell you now, I watched your video. You was obviously upset, and sometimes it's good things to get things out on video and to say what you actually feel. We have a deep... There was absolutely nothing wrong with that video whatsoever. You told the absolute truth and nothing but the truth. So help me England, right? That's all you said was the truth, and you get a 30-day ban. Now the bit that I don't understand again, when you talk about control of the public and control of public order, they are now kettling normal everyday people that are centre, that are just saying this is wrong. They are, for want of, but wrapping the far left in cotton wool and not touching them at all. Yeah, they are then kettling the people that just think normally. And what are we supposed to do when? So our next avenue of voice is social media, and what do?
They ban me.
You for 30 days. Did you incite any form of violence? No, you didn't. No. Did you say anything that was incorrect? No, you didn't.
I specifically said I do not advocate anybody going out. But what my point is, you should fear the rise of the far right because you are creating it.
I agree.
It never existed. We didn't have this rise of the far right until all these apologists, appeasers, panderers. It's like, for example, that imam who has done what he has done and said what he has said about sexual slavery. Well, I'm sorry, but it is in the Quran. It is war booty. They are entitled to it. They do believe they are at war with the West. Therefore, Rotherham was the prime example of sex slavery and permissible within Islam. But what really gets to me is, I was talking to Shireen Kadozi and I said the same thing to Rahil. I would have gone, if I was in a position of power right now, and would walk to that mosque, I would sling every single one of them out. I would shut the mosque down, and I'd open it as a lap dancing club, or a gay nightclub, or I'd open it as a pub. I would open it to something that they really didn't want. And when the next mosque or the next imam does it, I'll shut their mosque, and the next, and the next, and I will keep doing it until they start to toe the line and realise that this country will not tolerate this bullshit any longer. But what we've got is Sharia May. We've got Sharia bond. I think you and I was talking about the amount, because I remember bringing you a link and saying, take a look at this, Graham. Look at the amount of buildings in London purchased under Sharia bonds.
Yeah, no, you did, and you certainly put me on a path of investigation on that. And yeah, no, you again, what's very serious, and the people in this country don't realise, and first of all, they said it was just 3 buildings. It turns out it's 5, and it's probably more now. Secondly, it was secret. It was a secret, yet it was our money, and I don't understand why that would be. But just to give the people who are listening and watching, that under Sukuk or Sharia bonds, they, and I'll explain, not in detail, but I'll explain to you what a Sharia bond is. They have now bought Richmond House, which is the head office of the National Health Service. That is the building that if they, they are going to refurbish the Houses of Parliament, they
That's
are going
right.
to get up and they're going to move into Richmond House. That building is now under Sharia rules or law. In other words, it's a dry house, so you can't drink. It's not caused a problem at the moment because obviously it's a National Health Service head office. But that means if our MPs want to go in there and crack over a bottle of wine with, local dignitaries or whatever it is, they can't because there's penalties for that. Now, they've also, this is the bit that shocked me more than anything else, they've also purchased the Admiralty. Now, that's part of English heritage going back hundreds of years. And they have purchased that. Now, what a Sharia bond is, basically it is a bond where they take a stake in the property and the property's increase in value, etc. It's very similar to the way they mortgage things, but they don't actually charge interest. Now, what worries me is that Sadiq Khan is now the London mayor, and therefore he is going to lean towards using Sharia bonds to buy or to improve services, and I'm not happy about that. And there are other ways in which we can finance our English infrastructure without interest, without paying interest. And again, the current crop of modern politics has got no idea how this nation has been financed over hundreds and hundreds of years. If they did, they would know there are other options.
The other thing that I find quite amazing is I've said to you before when we've had conversations, I mean, you and I talk a lot anyway, and I said to you, Muslim Council of Britain are funding the Scottish National Party, right? They are.
Yeah.
Now, people will keep saying to me, well, how do you know this? Well, it doesn't matter how I know. You know, you've got a rough idea about how I know. But it is a statement of fact. Now, when we came out of the EU, when England, 73% of England voted to get us the hell out of the EU, the first thing you see was Sadiq Khan basically say, I'll stand with the Scottish National Party for their independence. I'll stand with the Scottish National Party and we will create Scotland. Where do they think Sadiq Khan is getting that money from? What's his dad's bus driver pension or something? No, it's coming from Zakat and the certification that's paid, as we all know. This, what Scotland don't understand, and look, I'm all for Scotland if they want their independence. Who are we to tell them they have no right to independence? If they want their independence, I have no objections to it. Neither do you. But I want to be treated equally and fairly, and I know we're not.
Well, I've got to be honest with you. I now have got an objection to them having another referendum, and my objection is under the auspice of the English not being treated fairly and not being treated equally. And I'll give you an example of that. There have been 2 referendums in Wales for independence, and they have now got their own parliament, although it's called an assembly, but it is in effect a first minister. Northern Ireland has had the same thing, and Scotland has got its parliament back, right? They all had 2 each, and England has had 0.
Yeah.
It now is the time that England should have a referendum on whether we want to stay in the Union. For fairness and equality, we, the English, not the Scots, not the Welsh, not the Irish, but the English should have a referendum whether we want to pull away, and our economy, our parliament, we'll create our own parliament, we'll create our own new politics, yeah, but a better politics than we've got now, where the English are put first. And that's my issue with that. Now, you've mentioned the SNP. there's a little bit of history going back over time. They was closely associated with the Nazis during the Second World War. They actually was going to collaborate with the Nazis, and they even set one of their ministers set up a cabinet for collaborating with the Nazis if it had come to an invasion. The second thing is that in the 70s, Alex Salmond, just for an example, just Alex Salmond, apart from being thrown out of the SNP a few times, right? So I know other people have been thrown out of parties before, but no one seems to mention this, right?
No.
But Alex Salmond was the head and founder of a group called the 79 Group. And the 79 Group was very similar to Sinn Féin. And what they wanted was a republic, and they wanted to get rid of the Queen and the royal family completely. Now, that's an argument that can be had yes or no, but the point is, that's his politics. He has got no regard, and I don't know if people are aware either, that he actually wanted to withdraw not only from the United Kingdom as a union, he also wanted to withdraw completely from the Commonwealth. And there's a lot to be said. I mean, I could go into detail with their economy and the fact that they're 14 billion deficit. You know, it's almost laughable, but it's the English paying for that.
Well, I've just, bear with me a minute, I've actually opened up my iPad. I've done it for a reason, because if I can see people commenting on the live feed. So, you know, if people have got questions and we can answer those questions, then we will do our best to answer them. It's not to say that we'll have all of the right answers, but we're sure as hell give it a damn good go. And for anybody who doesn't realise, Graham and I have worked together in many different forms for quite some time now. And we do have a very similar way of thinking, with some things we agree on, some we disagree on. My concern right now is that I don't know how many more rapes this country can take. The rape of its NHS, the rape of its benefit system, the rape of the women and children and men and boys in this country. I mean, you've only got to look at what happened in Cologne, where men's testicles were stuffed down their throats and women were stabbed in the vagina. What kind of a human being?
Can I just minorly correct you there? That wasn't in Cologne where that happened. Are you talking about where the American rock band was? Where they go on.
This wasn't it? It was either France or Germany. It was one or the other where they kept it hidden. They kept the information.
No, that's right. It was in France, but it was the Baccarat, the auditorium or wherever the band was playing, and where they slaughtered all of the audience. But it wasn't Cologne. Cologne was the other one. I know you know that, but I'm just, because so many things have happened, you get, you know. It
is, because actually, if you look at it, what you're seeing is one big thing happening.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's what people don't understand.
The one big thing that's happening is we're at war, and our politicians don't accept it and won't accept it because we haven't got tanks or aircraft bombing us or any of those things. They are trying to pull there are more than one ways to be at war with someone.
And also the reason they won't accept it is to acknowledge that the working class people were right. And God forbid that the people are right where the politicians are wrong. Because for a politician to admit they are wrong means to admit failure. And that seems to be something that they struggle with. Whereas you and I can go, do you know what? I fucked up, I've made a mistake. Because that's life.
Exactly.
You know? We make mistakes, we hold our hands up and go, do you know what? I fucked up, made a mistake. How do I put it right? And politicians go, well, I fucked up and I've cost people, all right, it's a few girls have been raped and it's been a few deaths. But we've got to actually stand our ground and tell them we were right. Because to admit we were wrong is to admit our government has failed.
Yeah.
And if we did have a referendum for the English to be able to vote, and don't get me wrong, I think the Scottish, if they want their independence, they should be able to have their independence. If Ireland want independence, they should be. But the English should have a right to vote on that. But I think when we have the right to vote, not only should we get the right to vote on whether we have an English Parliament, which we think we should have, we have every right to it, and that's true equality and fairness. I also think if truth be told, that we should have the right to oust every member of parliament that there is and replace it with a new reformed parliament from working class people.
100% agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I could talk about the rot set in this country. I know it sounds like going over old ground, but in 1911, because that's when we started paying MPs a salary. And at the time, when there were major debates in the House of Commons, because the MPs at the time didn't want to pay a salary, because they said, what we're going to do is we're going to create a political class that will be detached from the public. And that's exactly what's happened. So then what you get these lemons that go to university, do a political degree, do an economics degree, in which they're being wrongly taught anyway, yeah, and the Bank of England's already confirmed that, right? Then they go and act as a researcher for a politician for 3, 4, 5 years, yeah, and then they go out and get a job as a member of parliament, yeah. In the old days, it weren't like that. What they did, most people who become members of parliament had a lifetime's experience. They was very rarely an MP, a member of parliament, for more than 2 terms, right? Well, now you've got some of these idiots that have been there 45 years on their thousands and thousands salary. Most of them are earning 3 times what we're earning. Do you know what I mean?
And then to really add insult to injury, you know, we've got some politicians who do, putting it quite politely, and I will apologise for my language because I know that it's going live right now, but we've got politicians, elderly gentlemen, shall we say, that do sweet fuck all, but walk in, sign on the dotted line and take their £300 a day for turning up. I would love to earn £300 a day just for turning up and sitting asleep in a room.
Yeah, that's in the House of Lords. And again, there was an article about that the other day where they went into detail. They actually know who the people are that are just signing on and going. Well, if someone wants to give me £300 a day to sign on, I'd be happy with that. I'd still have to work, by the way, because that's in my nature. And the worst thing for me about Labour in particular, right? They and the Conservatives and the Lib Dems and I
was going to say none of them can escape it, really.
No, but what they don't get, they talk about hard-working people and hard-working people. I wish they would shut up, right? Because at the end of the day, what us hard-working people haven't got, all we want is a job. We want to go out, get up in the morning, go work, come home, have enough money to feed the kids, to pay for the electric, to pay for the mortgage or the rent, and go down a bit and have a beer. What did they do? They said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to overtax them. We're going to underpay them. We're going to slaughter the work in this country, and especially for the people up north. They've got no dignity whatsoever. They took away their communities. They took away their work, and that is vile and wrong. And that's what I want to change. I want to make England one England. Yeah? But at the end of the day, what do? They destroy all our pubs. They take our pubs. What did they do? They upped and upped and upped and upped the taxes on beer, yeah? Because they knew they were the hubs of our community. They'd known that for a long time, hundreds of years. It's always been the English way, yeah? And what did they do after that? They then said, you can't smoke in the pub. I'll smoke where I want. Do you know what I mean? But what did they do? They've slaughtered the
that no smoking ban killed a lot of the pub trade, and especially up north. It absolutely killed, because I don't know about you, I'm a smoker. I don't particularly want to stand out when it's pissing it down with rain or freezing cold or 6 inches of ice and snow.
No, I agree.
To go and have a cigarette. Why, if they had such an issue with this and it was all public safety, public health safety, etc., why didn't you have smoking pubs and non-smoking pubs? and let people choose which one they wanted to go into. Why? Because they know that people, even non-smokers, would have still gone into the smoking pub because it was always part of the social fabric of society. Now, then we get told, you know, if you're a smoker, we're not going to give you this kind of surgery. But they won't tell you that it's the smokers and the tax that's being put on the smoker that's actually holding up the NHS, holding up the government, paying their bills. But let's punish the smoker a bit further. And yet, if I was a drug addict, which I'm not, but if I was getting a syringe and sticking a syringe in my arm, and don't get me wrong, I know that there are people out there with addictions and they need help, but they'll give them help. They'll pay thousands, and then they'll say, come down to the chemist and collect your methadone. Methadone only continues to feed the urge they've got, and then they continue on the habit anyway. So you're not doing anything other than spending more money, which you're taking from the smoker, who actually is still an addiction.
No, I agree, and there are ways in which, for example, in Holland, just for an example, I mean, I've seen what's happened in the prison system with drugs, and you know, like in Holland, they've actually got cannabis joints on the wing, and you put a euro in, and you get a cannabis joint. Yeah, so instead of it being alcohol they allow in there, although they do allow you to have two cans of beer, I think it is, a day, they have a puff and they go to sleep and they're chilled out, yeah? And they have other sorts of things as well. But the point being, in this country, again, they did it completely wrong. They then started introducing random urine tests, and you basically got more time on your sentence and lost all your privileges, if you had any, for having cannabis in your system, right? So what happened then? People started, believe it or not, people started taking heroin instead of cannabis. Cannabis stayed in your system and can be detected in your urine for 14 days. Heroin is gone within 12 hours. So therefore, people then start taking heroin. So what the prison system was actually doing was creating drug addicts and sending them out. It was like a massive machine, turning out heroin addicts. And the public don't know all this. They was told and told and told, stop what you're doing because you're creating heroin addicts. And they just carried on.
Well, you'll be pleased to know I've just opened up another link. Now this is something for anybody who watches my live videos, they will know this because I've put this out. Not only have I written it, I have made videos about it, I've explained it. When I said there are 57,000 immigrants on the Greek islands, and mostly they tend to be Afghans, to the point where Afghan boys are being sold for €2. I don't mean sold by the hour. They're just being sold. Full stop. I think we've just lost Graham's camera, and I'm not sure why. Oh, there he's back again. Now, there was a friend of mine who'd gone out there, and he was working with the. It was an organisation that he'd gone out there with, and he was talking to the Christians out there, and he was asking them, you know, is there any ISIS in the camp? And they all went, and it was so blasé, they went, oh yeah, of course. Absolutely. Of course there is. As if it was norm. And I said, well, do you have any trouble? Well, yeah, because if they find out you're a Christian, then we are attacked on a regular basis. We've been beaten up. They tried to force us back into Islam. Then they attempted to actually stone a woman inside the camp. Okay. Now, I've just opened up Greek islands overflowing with migrants amid EU fears Turkey will abandon refugee deal. Because all that Merkel is interested in and all that these people are interested in is getting Turkey into the EU. That is all they're concerned about, which could be the worst thing that can happen to this country. Because if Turkey get in and they haven't got us the hell out, then trust me, that would be the biggest war this country's seen in fact, it'd be worse than the First and Second World War, I think.
No, well, I agree. we've got a terrible situation where the politicians are absolutely betraying us, and the people need to stand up and take back control. Not just the Brexit, I mean literally take back control. We need to take control of the Houses of Parliament and say, listen, you people are not representing us. You haven't done for a long time, and we've had enough. It's us. It's our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, and going back over time that built the country and the culture it is today. Yeah, they have got no right as a political class to take that office, and that's what the Magna Carta was all about. And now it's gone the other way completely, and we need to start stepping up to the plate and saying, you know, we've had enough. I mean, let me just point something out to you, because again, this is something that I often say to what I regard as lefties. Yeah?
I do have a question for you in a minute. Karen Kelly says, what does Graham think about, I think that's meant to be Brian, the outing of illegals. Is that Brian that wants to out the illegals, or Byron?
Oh, right, yeah. So okay. Well, funny enough, this will lead into what I'm going to talk about.
I thought it might do. That's why I thought I'd mention it. Go on.
Right. So that company is a fast food restaurant in Scotland, and what they actually did was, and I think is first of all, I think they almost knew it was coming on top for them, and that's why they did it. But basically, they've been employing illegal immigrants. And with false documentation in Scotland in this fast food restaurant for a number of years. And what they done was they staged. They asked all these employees to come to a certain place, a bit like a sting operation. And when they got there, they knew which ones had dodgy passports or work permits or whatever you want to call it, and they handed them over to the immigration service, and now it's going through due process for having them deported. Well, first of all, it's an offence for the company as well to employ those people, so they can be heavily fined for what they've just done. Now, I just think what they've done is a bit of a get-out clause because they knew it was going to come on top for them. That's my opinion of it. But it leads into what I was going to say about the Labour Party and Keir Hardie, who's the founder of the Labour Party, one of the founders, I should say. And he expressly stated, one, that we should only take in refugees that were being persecuted abroad and were preferably Christians, right? And had the same culture of us. If they weren't, interested. Now, that's the Labour founder that said that, right? So I don't see that. My personal views can't be far right if I agree with Keir Hardie, who is the Labour founder. He also said we shouldn't allow people into this country to work unless their country has a similar wage comparison to this country. In other words, you can't let someone in from Romania when they're getting 94 pence an hour and then put them on a minimum wage of £7.50 or whatever it is in this country, because you will get a massive influx. And again, if you look at what Keir Hardie said, one of the things that he didn't like about immigration was they all live together in a single house. Yeah, and you're talking about 10, 20 people. That's exactly what we've got now. And yep. Again, it goes back to what Theresa May has said, is this is modern day slavery. It's modern day slavery that our political class today have created.
And why is it that Theresa May now, you see, you kind of look at the Brexit and you see what happened, and she must have sat there and thought, you know what, this country, especially this part of the country, this part of the United Kingdom, England, are sick and tired of this now. They have had enough. If we don't do something to address this, well, why didn't you address it before it even got to the Brexit? But somebody has just written, which I find this quite, which I wasn't aware about, but somebody called Suzanne Honeyman has just said there is a mass anti-US Muslim protest outside US airbase in Turkey, where 5 nuclear warheads are being stored. How can our governments How can governments of other countries not see that this is not, it is not racist and it's not about preserving. I see people that all the time they go, this is white genocide. No, this is genocide of a culture. That's the difference. They are systematically destroying the culture of our country. And that has nothing to do with whether somebody is black or white or blue or pink or yellow. Is irrelevant. Our culture is being stripped. Our history is being stripped. Everything about our country and our culture. And we're being told all the time, you don't have a culture. Well, sorry, yes, we do. But I tell you what our culture isn't about. It isn't about female genital mutilation. It isn't about making a woman cover herself from head to toe. It isn't about mass raping and stabbing women to prevent them giving birth or cutting off men's genitals and thinking that when you're at war, these things are acceptable. That is what our culture is not about. But what I'm sick of is being told that we don't have one. We bloody well do. And years of onslaught and mass wars and wars with this country and dominating this country, we gave the world the greatest superpower that ever existed, which was America. You know, we have a history that is not just something bad. There are bad parts about our history, but there are parts of our history we sure as hell need to be proud of, and we need to reinstill that pride.
Well, as I've said previously, it was us that invented the light bulb, and we give the world light. It wasn't a step into the dark for the rest of the world because we invented the light bulb. We invented the 3 T's, which was the telephone, the telegraph and the television. We invented the internet in terms of the computer systems. We invented the World Wide Web.
That's
and
right.
There was a reason why it was called the World Wide Web and it wasn't called the European Union Web. Yeah, because it's global and we give that to the world and we give people education by doing that. Now, the irony, again, if I'll come back to the point on Turkey, but just to finish off that point about Scotland and what you just said about England and it's the English taking the brunt of this. Our economy is the 5th largest in the world. If Scotland stood on its own, it would be worse off than Greece. Scotland's immigration is at -6%. So where are the immigrants going? They're coming to England. They don't want to go to Scotland. They don't even want to go to Northern Ireland. Yeah, they definitely don't want to go to Wales. Yeah.
Oh, no, Wales has been hit a little bit. Not as hard as England, but it has been hit. Even I will say that. But on the whole, yes, they're coming to England.
Yeah.
But do you not realise London is the place where our pavements are paved with gold? This is the myth that's peddled out to people. If you want to go anywhere, get to England. They don't say go to Scotland. They don't say go to Ireland. Get to England. Get to England. In fact, there was a woman. The woman I was telling you about was involved in the jungle in the Cali doing the charity work. She's one of these that go out there and she's all love and light and, you know, all that kind of bullshit that goes with it. These are the people who go out and do it. And yes, it might be a good thing to go out and feed these refugees and maybe it's a good thing. She went, we go out and we give them food and we give them a sleeping bag. And we went, oh, no, well, that'll save the problem for the UK lorry drivers that are getting attacked on a daily basis. Give them a sleeping bag. Solves everything. Why don't you go and give some sleeping bags to the people we've got sleeping on the street, like the 13,000 armed services that are sleeping off on our streets? But we'll ignore them while you pop over to France, because obviously that's a far bigger issue. But fair play, you're out there and you're doing it. Then I'll see a tweet where she says that they have managed to get a child. Now, she didn't mention the age of this child. They have managed to get a child that had been smuggled in to France into an English lorry to get this child into England. Well done. So what you've just done is you have just enabled further people smuggling. And you want to turn around and tell me that that's charity? Because when I see videos of kids of 8 or 9 going like that, pointing at the camera and telling you they're going to cut your throat, I don't care if you're 10, 15, 25. Most of these people that they're claiming are children are between the age of 15 and 17. And now predominantly males.
Let me tell you something. The reason why Northern Ireland and the troubles went on so long was because they indoctrinated their children to hate and to hate the other side from a very young age, literally from when they was born. Why? And it took decades for that hate to be bred out of the children. It took generations to stop that. If you speak to a lot of the older people, they still harbour the same hatred towards Catholics, towards Protestants. The problem is that in Palestine, Israel, they have the same hatred for each other, and it's bred into Palestinians, not so much Israelis, but Palestinians. And to some extent I can understand it, but you're never going to solve the problem with that. And getting back to Turkey and the base being surrounded, it was actually surrounded about 2 o'clock in the morning, because I was actually watching it on telly when it happened, and they was pulling in the army was pulling in large vehicles all around the base. If there are any nuclear weapons there currently, I would be very surprised. In fact, I would be shocked that military intelligence on any side, whether it's MI6 on our side or whether it's the CIA, should have known that that was kicking off, and I would suggest that they would have got the 5 bombs out of the way if they're nuclear weapons. But the second thing I will say on that is I don't understand how people can trust Muslims when Islam promotes taqiyya and the sacred deceit, as it's known. That worries me, and it also worries me that in Turkey, again, something that you educated me on, and I've done some research on, was the fact in Turkey, Mein Kampf, and it is a bestseller. And if you translate that into Arabic, or it's translated into English, it's my struggle. Mein Kampf, mein struggle. If translate that into Arabic, what does it mean? My jihad. And people don't understand that book is now key to the indoctrination.
And for how long have I been screaming at people that the second best-selling book in all Islamic countries is Mein Kampf? Yeah. And to understand the seriousness of what that means, you know, I actually believe that Merkel is a reincarnation of Hitler. You see, I've always said, one of the things I've said to Baroness Cox is, I don't delete comments, not because I agree with all comments. I don't believe in people using derogatory terms, because I actually think it doesn't benefit us at all. I actually prefer it if people you stick to the facts. Let's use the facts and put the facts out there. Facts are really important, but we don't need to. Let's not go down the route of doing exactly what the left want us to do by using really derogatory terms. It's a pointless exercise. And it's a ridiculous thing to do. It doesn't help. It hinders. If you really want to help, the best way to help is you've got to give your opinions in a concise manner, instead of being offensive. That just gives the left something to use against you. So, you know, I know people are smart. They're intelligent people. So I want them to be smart, intelligent people and use the words. You know, the English language is the greatest language known to man. And yet we fail to use it. That baffles me somewhat.
Well, it's a very, very rich language.
Yeah, it is very rich in many ways, isn't it? I mean, it is the most spoken language in the world.
It is, and it's one of that's one of England's greatest exports is the English language. Obviously, there's a number of different dialects, and there are some that say that the American English is separating two nations by a common language, where there are certain things that you know they use different things, but different words. But at the end of the day, Australia, Canada, I mean, you can list them all. Fantastic.
New Zealand. I mean, it's worldwide. It is the worldwide language is English. Wherever you go, you can go on holiday abroad, And while you're abroad, you may not be able to speak their language, but if you say something, they'll understand parts of English because it is so worldwide.
Yeah, it is indeed. And there's many different exports that the English have given to the world. Again, I mean, if you get back to, not that I don't want to, if you talk about Islam and Dr. Bill Warner, and one of the things that he says is that they often say it's the translation problem from Arabic to English or whatever, but they don't translate it; they recite it word for word. So that isn't the issue, and I'm coming more and more to the conclusion that Japan, which actually banned or has banned Islam, I mean, it doesn't allow the Quran in.
It does.
It doesn't
That's
allow
actually not true.
mosques. It doesn't allow prayers. It doesn't allow any of it. There is no tolerance of it whatsoever.
I've got to correct you there. In Japan, there are mosques and there is Islam is permitted, but they do have an element of control over it, and that's, I think, the problem we've got here. Look, for me, politics and religion should never be mixed, and they should be separated completely at all times, but they're not, and that's been like that for a very long time, even during the days of Henry the Eighth, when politicians were whispering poison in his ear because he had to have an heir to the throne, and that heir had to be a son, hence why he had so many wives. But there is so much that we don't know. I talk to people, and I mention certain things from my history that I remember my parents teaching me, and people don't seem to know that much about English history anymore. And I can remember talking to somebody about Dick Turpin, and she was a friend of my son's, and my son's 28. She would have been about 22 at the time. And I mentioned Dick Turpin. She went, "Who's Dick Turpin?" And my mouth just dropped, and I went, "What?" She said, "Who's Dick Turpin?" I said, "How can people not know who Dick Turpin was?" The only difference is he was romanticised a little bit. They made him out to be the dandy highwayman, when actually he was a murdering scumbag and a particularly unpleasant fella. But a lot of people don't realise that the only reason he was sentenced to death was because he killed the king's cockerel. He actually shot a king's cockerel. They couldn't get him on anything else, so he was actually hung for killing a cockerel. And people don't. These are little things of history that may seem like small things, but they're not. They're huge things that our children should know, our grandchildren should know. You know, my dad took me on HMS Victory as a very young girl, and I did the same thing with my kids. And I can remember saying to my kids, "Do you know why the deck is painted red?" And they was like, "No." So I said, "Well, that was so that when the fella at the side of you got shot and blood was spilled, the guy who was still alive firing bullets didn't panic and try to run. He would carry on firing bullets. That's why he painted the deck red, so you couldn't see the blood." And this is another part of history that never gets taught. Our children don't know about Nelson. They don't know that much about Boadicea. They know very little about Dick Turpin. And I think pretty much everyone I've ever spoken to has no idea who Swift-Nick Robinson was, who was, in fact, the dandy highwayman. You know, nobody realised that Dick Turpin did not have a horse called Black Bess, but Swift-Nick Robinson did. And our history has slowly been eroded from us. It's being taken away from us. And the only history our children are now taught is how to be embarrassed and ashamed. And Rahil was right when she said, white guilt, white shame is the biggest problem in this country and in the West. She's right. And I think we have to get past this being ashamed. I can't be ashamed for being white. I didn't choose it. It's a birthright. Nothing I can do about it.
Well, again, Rahil Raza is one of my all-time heroes.
Next to me, of course.
Next to you. I was just about to say that. And again, going back to Dr. Bill Warner, if you watch his video, Why We Are Afraid, it spells out the history over time of Islam and England and the Crusades, and it shows you, I believe it was something like there were 500 and something battles that were Muslim or Islamic battles, and that was in their conquering process, if you like. And when you actually look at the Crusades, I think there was about 12. So when you look at what he says, and he puts all the statistics in there, that 270 million people have been slaughtered, yeah, from about or through Islam in 1400 years. That's a hell of a lot of people because of an ideology. Nothing more. There is nothing more to it. And again, if people watch that video, it's an absolute eye opener. And the other one that I think is really good is
the video you're talking about is there's a couple of Rahils, but one of the most important ones I think that people can go and look for, and that includes all of you on the live feed that I'm watching all the little comments come up on. Go and type into YouTube "By the Numbers" by Rahil Raza, because that breaks down from the radicals, the extremists, to the fundamentalists. And it shows how there is a massive problem with those who don't think that they're a problem, but in truth, their silence is a problem. It is the silence of the Muslim community. And I've got to be honest with you, this is what really irates me more than anything. And when you see me get angry on videos, which I try not to do ranty videos, but by nature, I'm a very passionate person, and I've got something to say, I'm going to say it. And if it offends people, well, quite frankly, I don't give a shit, because I'm not there to be politically correct. And Graham, you know me well enough to know I call a spade, and I won't confuse you by saying it's a shovel. And if I say something to you and I stand by it and I dig my heels in, it's because what I'm telling you is correct. And what really does my head in is when the drawing of the Prophet Muhammad came out, we saw 10,000 take to the streets in utter moral outrage, but rape 1,400 girls in Rotherham. Where were the same 10,000? You get women getting stabbed in the vagina. Where was the 10,000? A soldier gets beheaded in broad daylight. Where was the 10,000? You cannot kill. A priest gets beheaded. Where was the 10,000?
No, I agree entirely.
I am so sick to death of people saying to me, it's nothing to do with Islam. It is everything to do with Islam. And what I often say is, in truth, those people who don't commit these atrocities, that don't live their life committing these atrocities, and they are as outraged as we are, and they want it to stop. But the truth of it is, they would be seen as being not practicing Muslims, because they're not practicing it in its totalitarian state. When you take it in its totalitarian form, and you can go and commit an act and justify it by finding the quote in the Quran that justifies that act, or find it in the Surah, then it's a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. And again, the thing that people are not getting is that the Quran is only one book, one of the books of the trilogy. The other one is the Surah, and the other one is the Hadith, and which is the traditions. And people are being misled again by Islamic scholars and by imams in this country, and certainly the politicians in this country, by being told it's all about the Quran. It's not. The Quran is a fraction of what's actually going on. I mean, and again, if you look at the Quran, the first part of the Quran, if you like, or the first part that was written in the 13 years of Mecca, the Meccan Quran, there wasn't an issue. And to be fair, if it just stayed at that, we wouldn't be having these discussions now. But then when Muhammad went to Medina, and there were Jews and Christians, and he decided to become a warlord and a politician at the same time, and indoctrinate the religion, he basically slaughtered everyone. But the difference is that in Mecca in 13 years, he had 150 followers in 13 years. And when he went to Medina, in 23 years, up until his death, Muhammad's death, he had 100,000 followers. So he changed, and he changed the way that he operated. And again, I've said to people, I don't understand why our government and our politicians haven't seen the correlation between when he moved to Medina and The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu was a very, very successful general in the Chinese army, basically, or he was a Chinese general that devised a strategy. And part of those strategies in The Art of War, the actual strategy devised, is deceit. Yeah, it's one of the major things that you deceive your enemy. And then what have we got in the hadiths and the Quran? Again, we've got taqiyya. Everything points back to at some stage, Muhammad read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and what he did was he created a manual for psychological fear, war, and this is what we're going to do, and that comes from Sun Tzu and The Art of War. I've read it, I understand it, I've studied it for probably 4 or 5 years. When I look at that and look at what the Islamic religion is, or the ideology, I can see it, and I don't understand how our government don't.
Well, as you know, when you and I first met, there were things that, you know, I brought to your attention that you just were completely oblivious to. And I think that there are a lot of the public still very oblivious to it. But when you give them that information, instead of taking that information and learning from that information, we get to one or two things. You get those who will take that information and learn from it. Then you've got those who will sit there and go, no. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're a fascist. You're a Nazi. And to the point where, you know, I don't like racism in its true form of what we know racism to be. You know, I do not agree with that at all. But Islam is not a race. Muslim is, and I say this to people all the time, Muslim is what you are, Islam is what you follow. It's not racist to point that fact out.
No.
It is a fact. What I won't do, and this is where I get, as you know, I've shown you, you've seen some of the death threats I get and rape threats. And even as far as Germany, a man telling me exactly how I would be subjugated and then giving me a choice. You could be subjugated by white men or you could be subjugated by brown men. And I went, firstly, how very racist of you, but nice of you to give me a choice. Second of all, do not presume that men who are not Muslim are like the men you are talking about, because actually they're not. We have a country of... We are a proud country, we are, and we've got a country of proud people. But the pride is being stripped away, so we have to reinstill that pride. And one of the reasons that I decided to go down the route of conferences is because I think if we can get, instead of having, look, when you have a mass demonstration and you've got, I don't know, say for example, you've got 7,000 people on the streets, and you've got somebody at the front with the microphone, well, the chances are only the first few 50 to 100 people are going to hear what that person up there is saying. Anything beyond that, what's being said is lost. Mm-hmm. And you can't control what is going up in the background. And if you get your neo-Nazis and your idiots that want to turn up and call every brown person the N-word or, you know, stand there doing Nazi salutes like idiots, you can't see that. And therefore, but the media can. The media search for those few idiots to make that demonstration look bad. Whereas if you hold a conference and do it the way that I do, people who want to go, I mean, I can tell you now, my conference is until October. We already have 38 seats and spaces taken up. When you do it that way, the room will hold 75 people. That's not including the speakers. So it gives those that come along, whether they be left or right, it's irrelevant to me. They get the opportunity to ask questions to that panel. Doesn't matter who is on that panel, they can ask any question they want, as long as they ask it politely, calmly, rationally. Everybody in that room will hear what is said back. Now, I did this on the last one, and the woman who came along, I had two women. One was a Muslim woman who'd suffered Sharia in the UK. The other was a Muslim woman who wanted Sharia. And when you scratch the surface is then when you're able to actually expose and the double-sided, the two-tieredness of it, the whole thing. So this is a better way of doing it. And as we grow, as Marius grows, each conference will grow. Eventually we'll be hiring halls that will hold 2,000 people. But then we'll have screens that go all the way around, and people will still be able to ask questions, and they'll still be able to get their answers, but they'll still be able to hear what's being said. That doesn't mean to say that I don't think there is a place for street movements, because I think that eventually, like it or not, there will have to be. There will be a civil war. I don't think we can avoid it.
No,
I genuinely do not think we can avoid it.
No, the answer to that is it's looking very, very much like that's the only answer, because we are all just being ignored. Whatever we do, I'm talking about as working class people mainly, as we protest, they are attacking us. And when I say they, I mean the establishment. And it's invariably the British establishment. I mean, as you know, I'm not no lover of the British establishment. I think they are the problem. And the quicker we get an English Parliament and rule ourselves, the better. It's another one that's well past its sell-by date. But at the end of the day, it's them that divide and rule us. And we 100% need to you know, when they keep taking away, for example, putting you on a ban, for what? For using words. Just so what do they want? And if we take to the streets, they use the political police, if you like, because they are politicised now. I mean, look at police officers now, to what they was 30 or 40 years ago. Years ago, they had respect. Largely, you know, the Bobby had a tunic on, little silver buttons, you know, he had his little hat on, he'd walk around, but you had respect for the police, and they wasn't generally nasty to everybody in the public. Now, I'm not suggesting all police officers are like that now, but now they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of police officers that train every day for social disorder. They drive around in vans with all their riot gear, and they train in gyms for fitness, you know, go out running, all of those things, for what? To attack us.
And I've seen it. I've seen it. I've actually, as you know, I stood for Police and Crime Commissioner in Bedfordshire. Now, you came with me on one occasion when we went for
yeah.
when I did a hustings. And we actually watched, did we not? When I first arrived there was pretty much nobody outside. This was in the heart of Luton. I walk in, of course, I'm 5'3", blonde, blue-eyed, bad attitude, as they would like to say. And when we first arrived to the studio, I went in there. I was the only one who had said that she would ban the burqa. Of course, that caused moral outrage. By the time I came out of that room, there were men in their pyjamas and women in the burqa surrounding the building. They were pretty much all around the building. They had literally honed in on the fact that we were doing this show and gone, woof, yeah. They were there. The only reason that nobody touched me was because I had you and another big burly geezer with me to make sure that I got out of that building safely. Yeah. And because but that doesn't mean to say they weren't there checking out what do I look like, as well as what do I sound like. And it does put you into the heart of I know that there is a very high risk with what I do.
But the irony of that is you was actually standing for the police and crime commissioner's role. But if you had rung the police and said, we believe we've got a problem here, they would have left you to it.
Yeah.
That's the irony. There is no protection for us. You know, if you go back and look at Salman Rushdie, well, God knows how long ago it was now. Was it 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when he wrote the book? Satanic Verses, and he had a fatwa put on him. You know, he then gets 24-hour protection 5 days a week. Do you get that protection?
No.
Does Tommy Robinson get that protection? Does Nigel Farage get that protection? The answer is no, he don't.
Nigel Farage will be able to afford protection to a degree, certainly.
Well, he pays for his own private protection. But again, that's not the same as armed police officers protecting Salman Rushdie.
Absolutely, of course it's not. I mean, Geert Wilders virtually lives in a fortress, you know, because of his opinions. I'm just going to let my cat out, because otherwise he'll sit meowing around my legs for the next half hour. And I get absolutely, you're right, I get no protection, none whatsoever. And I can't even get a panic alarm.
No.
As ridiculous as that may sound, I can't even get a panic alarm in my house to say, you know, there's a possibility she could be at risk. But when I gave the police information on an impending attack, and I can't say how I got that information, but I did get it. 3 days later, Paris was hit. My equipment was seized. My hard drive downloaded. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sitting there thinking, why are you downloading my equipment? Seriously. I've given you the information. You can see the information. There is absolutely no reason for you to download all my hard drive.
Yeah.
But 3 days later, everything that I had told him, the information that had been given to me, suddenly, bang, we see it. We see it in Paris. We then see Leytonstone happen. There was more stabbings, people getting stabbed in the throat. All these things. Hang on a minute. There's a lady here. I think this is a lady, I'm assuming. Her name, if I can pronounce it correctly, is Ayan Anli Sayed. I am an ex-Muslim and I appreciate what you guys do. That to me is, thank you. We honestly really appreciate that she's tuned in and listened. This is what we want. And we want this show to go to Canada, America, New Zealand, everywhere. And as I said to people, we are now getting guests on that are educational. I mean, I think it's next week. I think it's next weekend. I've got Dr. Zudi Jassa. He's a reformist. I think it's important to have him on there. He's a very high-profile guest to have on. We will be getting Robert Spencer on. Again, another high-profile guest to have on. Rahil will be coming back on. And I'm actually making plans at the moment, hopefully, to get out to Canada, which will be happening. My passport is on its way back to me, but I've had to save every single brass farthing I've got, and I was very fortunate that a lady actually donated money towards the cost of the flight. Hasn't covered it all, and I've still got to raise the rest of the cash, but I can't thank that person enough, you know, for doing that. And it's not because I want a holiday. Trust me, if I want a holiday, I want a holiday where I don't have to do any of this. This is about going out and saying, do you know what? What you're reading in the media, what they're telling you is bullshit. It's lies. They're feeding you lies. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Are there no-go zones in this country? Absolutely there is. 100% there are no-go zone areas. What right does anybody have to make any street an unsafe street or a street where I am not welcomed? This is as much my country. And when you've got people that have come over, Hindus and Sikhs, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese in this country that have started their business, they pay their dues, they work hard, they pay taxes just like the rest of us. They've embraced our culture. We've embraced theirs, but not to the point where we haven't adopted their culture. We just respect their culture. You see it in London, Chinatown, when they have, you know, all the Chinese lanterns go out and they have the dragon come out. People come round and it's a spectacle and it's an amazing thing to see.
Just to let you, I mean, I agree with everything you just said there, but just to let you know, on the Chinese side of things, I had a shop and we used to have a lot of Chinese come in there. And on Chinese New Year, I used to give them a little red envelope with a couple of quid in it. And they loved that because that's part of their culture and it brings them luck. It's a red envelope with money in it, right? And that brings them luck and they like that, yeah? So, I mean, we do adapt to people, but the problem with an ideology such as Islam is based on pure and utter violence. And again, I you know, without doing, for example, what Singapore did, and Singapore, and when I say Singapore, they banned a religious cult, in Singapore. Can you guess which one it was?
Go on.
And tell me if you think there was outrage. It was Christian. Jehovah's Witnesses. In Singapore, Jehovah's Witness as a Christian religion is banned. They have termed it as a cult. Now, there was no uproar in the world over that. Everyone just accepted, well, that's their opinion and that's their country and they can go and ban them.
Got to be honest with you, Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. I'm not going to lie to you. They are. Don't care what anyone says. Being a Jehovah, it is a cult. But even in this country, Jehovah's Witnesses are watched very carefully because they do a very similar thing. They indoctrinate children. They believe the end of the world is coming. They would let their child die rather than give them a blood transfusion. For me, anybody who can watch their child die, quite frankly, it's got to be a cult. Only a cult would do that. But there isn't the same, you're right, there is not the same outrage. And then, of course, you've got the problem of all these different sects of Islam, different sects of Muslim, the Sunni, the Shia, the Salafi, the Wahhabi, the Ahmadi, then you've got the Sufi, all these different Muslims. So you kind of want to go, hang on a minute, that you'll see them go, you have to understand Muslims are being killed too. Yes, but they're being killed by fellow Muslims. I'm not killing them. So ask yourself, why aren't they killing fellow Muslims? Because they're from the different sect. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, but that's in a similar way to, I mean, and again, England to a large extent has been targeted by the Catholic religion. I mean, you've got Ireland, Wales, Scotland, who are predominantly Catholic. And then you've got the rest of the European continent, which is predominantly Catholic. And they attacked England for hundreds of years, really, because we reformed our church and we had Reformation and we created a different type of religion, one that was adapted to our needs. I mean, it just so happened that, the king didn't really want to carry on chopping his wife's heads off because he couldn't get a divorce. But the point is, someone recognised we can't keep on like this. We need reformation, So it was a violent act, or acts, and they said, right, let's do it a different way. And that's what we did. You just
said something very interesting. Well, I wasn't aware of this. You might be aware of this, but somebody has just written, Jehovah's are a company, not a religion, and now have to pay taxes. They invest in the stocks. They do invest money, and I do know that they do invest vast amounts of money, and they are worth a hell of a lot of money, the Jehovah's. But I wasn't aware of that. So, I don't know enough about Jehovah's Witnesses. They come to my door and inevitably I just go, thanks, but no thanks, and shut the door and walk away because I've no interest in learning about something I never intend to be a part of. The only reason I've had to learn about Islam is because of the threat it poses to this very country. But the other problem you've got is, we've got reformists and we've had reformists come on this show. And they agree with what I'm saying. They're not sitting there going, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. They're not true Muslims. That's the one that gets me. They're not true Muslims. Yes, they're all true Muslims. Stop this bullshit.
Well, again, going back to the to the research I've done in the past, if anything, it's the reverse of that. ISIS are the absolute true Muslims. They're doing exactly, to the word, to the letter, what Muhammad did. They are. And that's the difference. So when you get Islamists that follow Muhammad's word, and it's Muhammad that's caused the problem, and via his the hadiths and the Medina Quran and the Sirah, it is his violence that he is expressing. It's not Allah that says, we should be beheading all the Kafirs, and raping the women and doing all these things. It's Muhammad.
But the thing is, even down to the beheading, Muhammad did behead people.
Yeah.
Did it? Yeah. I believe he actually beheaded somebody. He beheaded a man, and then he raped his wife.
That was his brother-in-law.
Blood. Yeah. But then, of course, he married her, and that made everything hunky-dory because he married her, and therefore, any shame she may carry, he removed the shame by marrying her. Thanks for that, because I tell you now, as somebody who survived rape, had I have been forced to marry my rapist, I don't think you're hiding my shame. I think you're justifying his.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And
So
there is
the whole ideology is, apart from the correlation between the art of war and Sun Tzu and what happened then from Medina onwards, there is only one other correlation that I can see, and that's insanity. I mean, why would anyone? I've said this live on RT, not in these words, but I'll use these words, seeing as it's on the internet and I haven't got to worry about anything else. But why would any religion, ban alcohol, and then say, so you can't have a beer, but you are allowed to drink camel piss? There is no logic.
No, and I think that is something that's definitely. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I put a thing out the other day, and this was towards the Hindu community, where you could actually buy bottles of cow urine, and it was kept next to the naan bread. Yeah, I kind of don't want I don't want cow piss and naan bread for me tea. Thanks, all the same.
No, I mean there was a guy in Saudi Arabia, and if there's anyone interested in this story, because I found it quite amusing. In Saudi Arabia, there was a guy that was arrested because he didn't want to buy the camel's urine anymore. So he was filling the bottles himself and selling it to people. And they arrested him, right? Now, you would think that would be a very serious offence, right? And they just told him off and said, "No, you got to sell camel's urine. You can't use your own." Do you know what I mean? And you just think, what is going? That was in Saudi. You just think, what is going on here?
This is the other thing that I find interesting. England seems to be, and the United Kingdom seems to be very wholly ingrained with Saudi. America seems to be very ingrained with Iran. So two of the most extreme countries when it comes to Sharia law and Islamic scripture are in bed with Western countries like America and the United Kingdom. You kind of have to go. See, this is the problem. I said this to Theodore Schubert last night. We've got the rich elite and the powerful. And the richer they get, the more power hungry they become. The more power hungry they become, the less they care about the people they're supposed to represent.
Yeah, I agree.
So that means that we are ants. They are giants, we are ants. That's the logic of it. But, an ant is only as weak as a single ant. You get an army of ants, they're extremely powerful. And that's what the government don't understand is, while you're picking up your big boot and stamping down on these small ants, sooner or later, all of the other ants are going to come together and they're going to be a mighty force. And that's what they see as being the rising tide of the far right. It's not the rising tide of the far right. It's the rising tide of no more. Enough is enough. We are tired now. We're tired of being dictated to. We're tired of living in a world where it isn't safe for our children. It isn't safe for a woman to get an attack. My mum is 71 years old. And she said to me the other day that when she'd ordered a taxi, and I think this is really sad, the man who pulled up was a Muslim man. Now, she knew by his clothing, my mother wouldn't get in a taxi with him. Such is the fear that our pensioners feel. And then I think it was a few days later was when I saw the link of a 79-year-old woman that was raped by a Muslim refugee, a Syrian refugee, whilst visiting her sister's grave. That could be my mum. or somebody, and all of these lefties that go, oh, you know, you can't say this about, I can say it. I can say it because it's happening. It's not my fault. You are too blind to accept it, too blind to acknowledge it. And let me tell you now, I hope it's not your children, your mother, your sister, your wife. There was I think I shared it to you on WhatsApp. The guy who made a very brief video to say that I think it was his wife, had just been assaulted by 9 refugees.
Yeah.
And the anger in that man's voice, and he was from Germany, but he was in America, so he couldn't do anything to help her.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was your wife or your sister or your mother.
No, I agree entirely. And again, I mean, my ex, you know, she goes out really early in the mornings and she works till late at night. And I worry because she uses public transport. She doesn't drive. And I worry because there are situations where she could easily be put in. Now, you wouldn't necessarily have had to worry about that 10 or 15 years ago. But now you definitely have to worry about that. That makes me very sad where our society is, you know, been devalued. Not in terms of monetary, in terms of safety and culture. That we created a civilized England, and now it's being turned on its head. And it's the politicians that have done that.
See, it's a bit like somebody said to me the other day, how would you, if you were in a position of power, how would you challenge it? So that's a question I'm going to put to you before we end, because I think we've bored people enough. I'm sure people are sick of my voice by now. Well, they'll be sick of yours, Graham, but that's because, you know, actually they love you. It's because of your cheeky accent, big cheesy grin and cheeky cheeks going on. So I was asked the question, if I was in a position of power, what would I do to resolve this issue? So I'm going to put the same question to you. If you were in a position of power, i.e., for example, Prime Minister of the country, what would you do to tackle this issue? And you can be honest, because this is not a politically correct show.
There's 6 things I would do. I would change. There are a number of things that I would change in this country, and some of it is too long to go into. But to change the Islamic situation, I would create, first of all, if you come to this country, you swear allegiance to England, full stop. A bit similar to what they do in America, where you know, we'd have our own national anthem, that where being a citizen of England, you become part of our tribe, if you like. And I don't think there's anything wrong with tribalism. Racism is a different thing. That's about supremacists. But tribalist is about people coming together as one big community. And it's lots of communities all joining together to be that one England, which is, again, you know, I don't believe in the north-south divide. So there are a number of things that I would do. There is a list of things that would directly affect. If it's Islam, I would ban, or I would strengthen and enforce animal cruelty laws in the extreme. So what I would say is there is zero tolerance of animal cruelty in this country. That, in effect, and there would be no exemptions. So that would get rid of halal, and it would get rid of a form of finance for Islam. I would also ban any form of religious education in schools. I would also ban any form of religious politics, full stop. I mean, technically we've already got that, they're just not enforcing it. I mean, the Church of England is not politically aligned, for example. But Islam obviously is, because it's part of the ideology. But there's lots of other, well, not lots of, there's 6 other things that I would do, which is on my webpage on a post, which I'll bring up, or I'll put a link on it to it. But there's only 6 things that you need to do to change the lives of everybody in England for the positive. And I am not, I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea, I am not a brainless lefty. Yeah. One of the things that we need to change in this country, one of the things we need to change is the tax system. We need to change to a tax system where instead of you giving handouts to people, for example, in Hong Kong, if you want 9 children or 10 children or 16 children, you can have that. What you get is tax allowances for them children. You don't get family allowance. But in order for that to happen, you need to create work and an environment where businesses thrive. So everyone can have a job. And I've got a plan for that as well.
What would you do about migration? Immigration. Not migration, immigration.
Well, first of all, I do believe in the point system that Australia have got. I'm being completely honest. I would make sure that our army, I apologise for that, our navy was in full force. I'd rebuild our navy because we're an island nation, and I would protect our shores. But the major point I would say that I would want to do, if there was any boats coming across the channel, I'd turn them back. And if there was an incident where, we had to tow one and it sunk, so be it. But they're not setting foot on our shores. I do believe you need to do what Australia did, and that is the only way that that's ever going to work. Apart from that,
it hasn't stopped it. Australia's still being hit with this. Mark Rowley, who's on my Facebook, lives in Australia. Australia is still being hit. So although it is a better system and they haven't been hit as hard as England, when you look at the size of England and the United Kingdom in comparison, we can fit into a tiny little bit of Texas. So that gives the people an idea of how small we are. We're a really small island. But so when you think that Australia is facing this problem and the sheer size of it, I think that there is a bigger problem in Australia and a bigger problem in America than Americans and Australians realise. In fact, we're really trying and hoping to get I think it's Pauline Hanson on, who at the moment is standing in the elections, I believe, in Australia. So I'd be really interested to find out, what she knows about this and how much of this does she understand, and have they had any grooming gang scandals out there yet? Has it hit them, or is it happening underneath their noses and nobody knows? Because people think that the grooming gangs in this country were down to bad parenting, and they weren't down to bad parenting at all.
No.
A lot of these girls came from ordinary families that parents even put them into care to get them away from these men that were grooming them and raping them. Mm. But they wanted to play on this. These girls were disenfranchised. These girls were from care homes. Bullshit. It's a lie. It's a lie and it's a myth. And it's a myth that's got to be broken. It's a very taboo subject, and people find talking about rape is a really uncomfortable thing for people to talk about. It is. It's one of the most uncomfortable things for people to talk about. I believe if we don't talk about it, we can't stop it.
No, I agree. That's why. Years and years ago, paedophilia and incest went on. It just wasn't spoken about. Now it's become, and to be fair, the internet and the communications that we've got now, and the way that we talk more in that way, it's one of the reasons why Islam is coming unstuck. Because we're talking about it and saying, actually, we now know. If you go back even 30, 40 years ago, to get the amount of knowledge that myself and you have got now, for example, you would have probably had to study for 10 years in a university, scouring every single university library, probably having to fly to different countries to read certain books. That's what you had to do. What do you do now? You tap the information in, up it comes.
Oh, but they are trying to stem this by taking control of Google, which is something we'll cover on another day. But for now, we need to say, give everybody a big wave because they can all see you, Graham. And we will say thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. We really do appreciate the support that we're getting. Please download the app for Our Eye on Islam. Please go and subscribe to Our Eye on Islam. Also, Graham's going to edit this video. This will go up on YouTube. I'm going to ask him very nicely, in my nicest possible tone, if he would please put the Maria's website link in as well, which I will send to him, which we'll also put the Our Eye on Islam link in on the bottom of the video. So people will be able to find it. They'll be able to find the information. And what would be great is if everybody who has watched this live feed, if they can get the word out there about the fact that this show is out there, that we're trying to make a real difference. Let's get this global, and hopefully we can get Graham on again, because the man is a font of useful information.
Don't get me talking about the monetary system.
I will on the next one. That's going to be definitely the next one.
Yeah,
because I think
we'll deal with the threat first, and then we'll deal with the monetary system.
Absolutely, but for now, it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
and it's goodbye from me. And let's see if we can find a really decent song. I think we'll find something that everybody can listen to and thoroughly enjoy. For now, everybody take care. Stay safe.